So as a child on the family farm in Scotland, I remember one of the few TV programmes my dad sat down to watch, and that was the hugely popular series All Creatures Great and Small. And these were made by the BBC and based on the books by the British veterinary surgeon Alf Wright, who wrote under the pseudonym James Herriot. Well, since this series, there's been a real fascination towards the real life work of vets. And today I'm over the moon to be having a wee chat with a man who is not only an extraordinary vet and has continued the fascination of bringing all things vet-like to our screens through the massively successful The Yorkshire Vet, but he's also a prolific author, a scholar, a daring sportsman, and to cap it all, was awarded, wait for it, the Dalesman Yorkshireman of the Year 2017. So it can be none other than the naked vet himself, Julian Norton. And you've got clothes on.
I have, yes, but bizarrely, this time last week, I was doing another podcast with some people who are now friends from BBC Radio Sheffield, and they have their own podcast, which is called The Naked Podcast, and the guests are all naked. And they said to me, would I like to do it? So I thought, well, this sounds quite funny. So we had exactly the same as we're chatting now, except I was sitting pretty much here without any clothes on at all. And I was thinking, now, which podcast is it today? Is it the Evelyn Glennie podcast, or is it the Naked one? But you see, I got the right one today. So
well, I don't mind. However you want to turn up is fine by me. I've seen all sorts. And actually, you know, being a farmer's daughter myself, I remember, you know, the various vets coming to the farm and sorting things out. And yes, they were, you know, they often had to strip down, you know, whilst an arm was up the backside of a sheep or a cow or something. So it was quite a normal sight.
Yeah, it's a strange thing. People often say, why do we do it? It's not out of exhibitionism at all, but practically it saves getting a shirt ruined, even if you've got protective equipment on that part of the shirt gets ruined with.
Absolutely.
And you can also, if you imagine your sleeves rolled up, you can, with no top on, you can go that much further inside.
Yes.
So
yes.
there is a practical reason as much as a you know, an aesthetic reason. But of course, they loved it. The first ever thing that we filmed and we started doing the Yorkshire Vet was me, and to take my top off, and I thought, what am I going to do here? And my decision was quickly made: just be normal, Julian, just be normal. And I did, and the rest kind of went from there, really.
Amazing, because I remember the vets wearing a great long, almost like a rubber glove, but it was right up to their shoulder almost, you know.
We still use those. Certainly, if you're pregnancy testing cows, for example, then you do rectal examinations, and then a glove is essential if you keep clean fingernail.
I mean, why do you think, though, since All Creatures Great and Small, there's been this real continued interest in, you know, following a day in the life of a vet? You know, it just seems an amazing thing, and surely it must be a huge educational tool, not only for those who are, you know, following the footsteps of being a vet, but also for perhaps our youngsters who may not know, you know, where milk comes from, where eggs come from, where, you know, bacon comes from, and so on. You know what I mean? There just seems a real fascination.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there is a fascination. You know, people love animals, and I think particularly, you know, in Britain, there's a very strong affinity with animals of all types. And that's always something that's captivated people's imagination. I think, you know, vets, it's kind of wholesome work, isn't it? It's making animals better, it's bringing life into the world, and that's really life-affirming, almost literally life kind of creating and life-affirming. And at times such as we're in now, that seems to be something that's really important. You know, and it's very varied what we do as vets. Is today I've been operating all morning, but yesterday I was looking at cows, tomorrow it's sheep. Monday was pigs, big woolly hairy pigs. So literally every day is different, which is something that brings quite a richness to our job. But yeah, people do seem fascinated, incredibly so. When I look on Channel 5 on a Tuesday night and it's still us there, we're getting people watching. It's amazing. But one of the things I've really loved is, as you say, educating people in a pretty gentle way. It's not a documentary. It's I would ideally like to be a little bit more informative and have more more, not science, but more sort of facts in the program. But it's an entertainment program, and we can get a lot of information across. Like I say, these days, a lot of people, there is a big disconnect between the food that we eat and the milk and where it comes from. So if we can bring that together, then it's definitely.
And I think also our relationship with animals, of all descriptions, is just so, it's so important to us, as human beings. We do like pets of one sort or another, and I think that we often care more for our pets sometimes than people. There seems to be an affinity between a vet and an animal, an owner and an animal. I took Sophie, my cat, to the local vet just a few weeks ago, and honestly, the care that was taken over this old cat, and then I go to the doctor or something and it said, well, pull yourself together and you'll be fine, in a day or so. And so the empathy seems to be much greater. And I think that when you're watching a program like the Yorkshire Vet or anything like that, it's tapping into the emotion of the owner, as well as the expertise of the vet, as well as the environment, as well as just what that might mean financially to a particular situation. If it's a farmer or something like that, what does it mean to lose a sheep or a cow or something? It all has an impact, really. And I think it's really interesting to tap into those elements.
Yeah, I mean, when we first started making the Yorkshire Vet, we thought it would be 6 episodes. That would be it. We'd have a bit of fun on a Tuesday night, and then life would get back to normal. And it was because we didn't see the longevity. I thought once we've had a calving, and then a lambing, and then a dog that's vomiting or whatever.
Yeah.
That's it. We've done that. But then I quite quickly realised that behind every animal there was a human, and it was actually the human element that was the thing that was of interest. You can look at the dog or the cat or the cow, and that's interesting and cute, and we can make that connection for sure. But it's actually the person behind the animal and the emotional connection between the two, and that's really, I think, what drives the success of the program. It's the strength of that bond. I'm sitting here now talking to you, and at my feet, I don't know whether you can see if I go like that, my little dog.
Oh, look at that. Oh, definitely wanting attention right now.
She is, yeah.
Beautiful.
But she's good at, it's that sort of unconditional, unswerving love, really, that animals give us. And
that's true.
She never gets fed up with me. She never thinks, "Oh, gee, what a pillock," shut up. Never answers back. There's an unconditional love that our animals have with us, and that's pretty special, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really. And I think one of the other things I've absolutely loved in the Yorkshire Vet is the humour. There's a kind of dry humour that feeds through everything, and it puts things in perspective, because I suppose you're dealing with just so many situations, good and maybe not so good, but yet that thread of just hanging on to the real humour is really important without belittling anything.
Yeah, I've always found animals to be amusing. They do funny things. They look often hilarious. Even just like I say, my dog here, she's
look.
Funny. There's a lot of humour that comes with animals, and you can't tell them what to do. You can't predict what they're going to do often, and it just makes you smile without even trying to be funny. And then, of course, there are some genuinely hilarious things that happen, especially in the context of veterinary work. There's lots of bodily fluids that go in the wrong place at the wrong time, and there's animals that escape, and yeah, endless
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
You could write about it.
So, I mean, when you're filming for the Yorkshire Vet, I mean, are you choosing what to film? Do you have a plan B at all? Is it just something that is quite spontaneous? I mean, obviously you can't ask the animals to do anything unnatural, but I mean, how are the things chosen when you're filming for something like that?
That's a really good question. Well, when we first started, they literally filmed everything that we were doing. And that was in part because no one knew what kind of content there would be. No one knew what volume of cases we would have that would be useful. Partly to, I think, get us used to having a camera pointed at us, and everything that came in, unless it was a dog vaccination or a cat's, nails to be clipped, they would film. But then, and then over time we've got a bit more selective, and there's a camera crew with me pretty much all the time, which is quite a small crew, a sound engineer and they hold a boom. I don't know whether it's called a sound engineer, but a sound person, and the PD with the camera, and that's it. So it's two people and me. And it varies. Sometimes it's literally as it happens. I'll phone up the PD that I'm working with and say, Laura, I'm going to carve a cow. Can you be here in 5 minutes? They have a little office around the corner. Sometimes they're sitting in the practice waiting.
Wow.
And then we go off to carve the cow, and she'll be sitting there saying, where we're going, Julian, tell me what's happening. And I'll say, well, I'm heading off to carve a cow. Could be really tense. We don't know what's going to happen. And then other times it's a little bit more sort of, if I know, for example, I've got, for example, I was speaking to someone today about a bearded dragon that's got a black spots on his tail. So I would then phone up Ross and say, right, bearded dragon's coming in tomorrow. I don't know what it's going to be like, but it might be interesting to film. And then they kind of get ready and film it like that. So it's a mix of very spontaneous things, and sometimes a little bit more kind of controlled. But it's all very natural. I mean, everything that we do is as it happens.
It's real,
and it's real, and I think that's really part of the appeal of the program. It's real life stuff.
Absolutely. It could hardly not be. I mean, you could barely stage something like that, really. And I suppose the amount of people in the crew would have an impact as regards to how the animal might react, if it's a horse or something, or I don't know. I mean, I obviously don't know, but I'm only imagining that would have to be.
One time there was an edict came down from above that said, for health and safety reasons, we had to wear, or the crew had to wear fluorescent jackets, safe high visibility jackets. And I said, no, that's not going to work, because we can't go on to, for example, see a horse that might be injured or frightened or poorly, and 2 people are there wearing high vis jackets. It doesn't work. You've got to blend in and be part of the the kind of
the
farm,
environment. Really. And how about the owners? I mean, have they normally been pretty open to the idea of being filmed and the...
Yeah, that's another good question. And there's 3 camps, and the third of people definitely don't want to be filmed at all. No way. Don't want to be, and that's end of story. Can't be persuaded.
Is that a Yorkshire trait, do you think? Or a generational one, or hard to say?
It's hard to say. It's also hard to predict who's going to be up for it, as it were. And so, I mean, I went to do a cesarean a few weeks ago on a cow, and the farmer, great big kind of gruff, very non-smiling kind of farmer, and I was almost certain he would say, no, I don't want any cameras on my farm. But I thought I'll just put the question to him as I was about to set off. So I said, oh yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes, whatever. I've got a cameraman with me who's desperate to film something. Would it be all right if he comes along? Fully expecting to get effing blind and all sorts of. It was quite the opposite. I said, oh yeah, I think that'd be really good. I'd love to show off, my farm and my cattle. So he was really quite quite proud of his stock, and really wanted to talk and tell people and show people what a good job he was doing on his farm.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and then there's some people who are completely ambivalent and aren't interested, or don't mind, and they'll be go with the flow. And then there's other people who put the makeup on and get their hair done specially, and almost come in with like cats that don't really have anything wrong with them, which is really funny.
So you've got to kind of create a scenario. Oh, yes, what's that lump on the back of the ear or something?
Yeah. So it's funny. There's definitely three camps that don't really move. If you're either in one camp or another, or the third camp. So that's really interesting. And to see the other thing that's really fascinating that I never imagined is to see how people react when a camera's pointed at them. Because if the farmer's being interviewed or the owner's being asked questions about, what the animal means to them, and I'll be standing there doing my thing or writing the notes on the computer or whatever, or maybe taking the animal away to be x-rayed or whatever, and then they usually have a few minutes of questions to the owner, and if you think about it, it's not something that most people are asked very directly. How do you feel? This bull, what does it mean to you? How important is this bull to the farm? And it's really interesting to see how people emotionally open up when asked quite direct questions that they wouldn't be asked in normal life. And series 1 of the Yorkshire Vet, there was a really interesting case that I was seeing. It was a bull I was doing a fertility test on this bull because some of the heifers that he'd been in the field with were not pregnant. So there was a suspicion the bull wasn't fertile. So I'd done this investigation and concluded that was the case. He wasn't fertile, and he was only young. And the camera person at the time was asking the farmer about this, and again, a gruff, tough, rough, elderly Yorkshire farmer. What does it mean to you, this bull, and what impact does it have on your farm and your livelihood? The fact that he can't get anything pregnant. Anyway, he burst into tears. Did this farmer, and he was crying, and he said, I'm doing my best. I'm really trying to get my herd to be really good of a certain standard, and this is not what I wanted, not what I expected, and burst into tears. So it is fascinating to see people kind of, rather than clamming up and going inward when faced with questions and cameras, a lot of people, it's the opposite. The emotions really come out, and that's been really fascinating to see.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, on our family farm, which is just north of Aberdeen, and I remember during the BSE time, and foot and mouth and all of that kind of thing, and the farm was devastated by that, as indeed were hundreds and hundreds of farms up and down the country, thousands of farmers, and I just think, I mean, apart from that aside, I've definitely seen, in a way, that emotion come through, but it'll only come through, certainly in my experience, when the farmer is in the company of a person who understands their environment, their predicament, their situation, because they are trying their best to solve a situation. And it is interesting. And otherwise, they're pretty dry, unemotional people, they don't seem to open up in an everyday situation. And but it is interesting that. But I mean, when you were asked to participate in the Yorkshire Vet, did you immediately say yes to that? Did you feel, I'll be very comfortable in front of the camera, or did you have to think about it, talk to your family about it? How did you make that decision to say, I think I'm going to do this?
Yeah, again, that's a really interesting question, because it was quite a big thing, very big thing to commit to. So at that point we thought it was going to be 6 episodes, and genuinely had got no idea that it would turn to what it is now. In 11, series 11 now we're in.
Yeah.
So at the practice there was 3 partners. I was the junior partner, and two with Peter, obviously one, and a third partner, and he didn't want to do anything at all, and he would very against it. Peter kept changing his mind and didn't really want to commit to it. And I thought about it, and I thought, you know what, I think this would be quite good fun. So I was quite keen, not because I had any aspirations to be on telly, far from it. I'm, quite the opposite, quite quiet and shy and reserved, and never really have been comfortable in that sort of public arena. But I felt quite passionately that the kind of practice that we were doing was worth sharing with people, and it was worth, if people wanted to watch it, I felt passionate that it was something that was worth sharing. And the veterinary profession at that time, there was a lot of, from some sectors it was seen as being quite profiteering and quite money driven, and specialism was being seen as really the way forward, the likes of super vet and things. It was all kind of implants and artificial limbs, and it was almost, I felt that generalism was being kind of looked down upon as not something that was really worthy of celebrating. And I feel really passionately that we can do a good job as first opinion general vets rather than necessarily being a specialist. So I was quite keen to share that kind of angle, and moreover, I just thought it would be fun. And the more I thought about it, there was this sort of little hook of, this could be really fun. It might be. What I really thought is, it will film from April till October, or April till September, and it'll be 5 or 6 months of something a bit different. And I just thought, that's got to be a good thing.
Interesting.
And it was different, and it was a different way of doing our work. We did the work the same, but you had to explain it to a third party via a camera.
And did that? Sorry, Julian. I was just going to ask, did that impact the normal running of the practice, if you know what I mean? The filming, or did you have to change the schedules a bit, or did it sort of interrupt the flow, the rhythmic flow of the general practice?
Yeah, it did a bit, in that it took a bit longer. So, I mean, the camera teams are very aware of our main priority is our job and the animals that we treat. But nonetheless, there's it takes a bit longer. It takes probably, depends what we're doing. It might take 20 minutes more if you're on a farm visit, because they might maybe want to get some shots of you doing things, and usually after you've finished, they'll say, oh, can you just drive in again, and we'll get another driving in shot. And things generally would take a bit longer, and that was, well, it was difficult because we were busy enough anyway, just doing the veterinary side of things. So that, particularly the first year, every lunch break that would have happened never happened because we were tied up with filming. Every day started an hour earlier, and every day went on till 8 o'clock rather than 6:30, sort of thing. So and you'd get home, and for the first time in my whole life, I'd get home from work and sit on the sofa and fall asleep. And I was thinking, what's going on? Why am I doing this? I never sit on the sofa and fall asleep. And it was because it was doing 2 jobs at once. It was doing your normal job and making a television program. And luckily, as time's gone by, the second bit has become more second nature.
So I mean,
it was fun.
No, that's really, really interesting, actually. I mean, when someone is a student vet, are you deciding at that point whether you're going to be a specialist in a particular area of being a vet, specializing in small animals, big animals, or a certain type of animal, or being a general vet? Is that something that, you know, you've gone through in your mind, or have you always felt, no, I'm going to be a vet that deals with big, little, and everything in between?
Personally, I always, when I started as a vet, I always wanted to work in mixed practice.
Yep.
And I've been doing that for, crikey, what now? Nearly 25 years. So quite a long time of mixed things. I wanted to work in Yorkshire, and I wanted to work outside in the fresh air.
Yes.
And I've definitely done both those things. I came from a mining town in West Yorkshire where there wasn't a lot of greenery there. Everything was grey and gloomy. And I've always liked being outside, and I've always obviously liked animals and working with them. So I wanted to do a mixed practice kind of job. It gets harder, of course, as time goes by, and it's, you know, it's more challenging. But I think there's still a lot of young vets that want to pursue a generalist career, at least to start with. But there's always tendencies, I think, now increasingly for vets coming out of vet school to be going down one angle, orthopedic surgery maybe, or just specialized horses, or just maybe cats or dogs or whatever, or just farm work, for example. So there's definitely an increasing tendency to do just single species or single discipline vet work. And I guess, you know, I don't, there's no problem with that. No, I think that's great. To be very good at something is great, but I think it's a much more rich and varied job if you can be very good at lots of things, and then you get the satisfaction of doing lots of things very well rather than just one thing very well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I suppose, you know, people have all sorts of things that they have as pets nowadays, you know, a greater variety than perhaps we used to. But, you know, here we are, we're sort of in quasi lockdown. You know, we've had a strange few months, a challenging few months for sure. And so, I mean, how has this impacted on your practice, on you know, everything that you've done so far, whether it's as a vet or through the filming with the Yorkshire Vet and so on? How has all of this impacted your work?
Yeah, it's been difficult, as it has for everybody. In some ways, I feel a bit of a whinger to moan about it, because I've been able to get out and about, and certainly at the beginning, springtime, there was a lot of lambing time, calving was going on, and I'd drive past houses on my way to lamb a sheep on a Sunday afternoon, and I knew full well that there'd be kids in that house that would not have left the house for all day, all week, or whatever. So it was nice to be able to get out and be relatively normal. That said, it caused a lot of constraints as to the way we were working, as it has to everyone. And, you know, on the one hand, we were trying to, you know, do what we were told, but yet on the other hand, it was impossible to do that and do your job. So I remember one day going to do a cesarean on a heifer, and it was big and heavy, and there was no way I could do that without having the farmer help me physically pull the calf out. And so, you know, you can mitigate the risks as much as you can, but quite a lot of what we were doing, it was impossible to do that and still carry on functioning. And we were limiting, you know, contact with people and clients and things, and that I found that difficult, because, you know, it's the essence of communication, and being with people is the essence of a lot of what we do as people, let alone as professionals. And it was, you know, you could see pictures and videos of dogs walking along and to see if they were lame and that sort of thing, and it was okay, it was better than nothing, but it wasn't the same. You felt like you couldn't do the job properly without handling that leg, or, you know, physically being close to the patient and the owner, obviously. So it was difficult. Yeah, I didn't like not being able to do my job well, and I felt compromised, and I felt that you know, things weren't being done correctly because of the situation that we were all in, and I
Yeah.
found that frustrating. In terms
Yeah.
of it was even worse because they couldn't do any. At least we could do the stuff that was emergency or welfare driven, or ill animals and things, but they didn't do anything for about 2 months.
Gosh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean,
So
I watched the Yorkshire Vet last night on television and saw Peter dealing with a tortoise, I think it was, and just, I think it was a tortoise anyway, and just opening up the little mouth, and he was saying, oh my gosh, it's a strong tortoise. And there's just a little bit of yellow that he said was unusual, and it might have been an infection in the mouth. And well, that would have been really difficult to try and suss out, if he just didn't get his finger in the tortoise's mouth, and open it up, and because it's small anyway, and so yeah.
And one time I remember a lady had sent a picture of a cat that had some skin lesions, and she'd taken a picture of one small area on the cat's leg, which looked for all the world like a small patch of dermatitis. And a colleague had seen this, and we were doing things by email, pictures and phone calls and stuff, and had prescribed some cream to put on this lesion, and it hadn't got any better. And I'd spoken to the lady and said, well, you better come in to examine the animal properly. And the poor cat, the whole of its body surface was covered in similar lesions that the owner hadn't noticed, just because the hair hadn't fallen. So it needed systemic treatment rather than just topical treatment on that localized area. And it was completely missed by the owner and the vet who'd seen the little just the emailed picture. So you're dead right. Something like the mouth of a tortoise, you've got to be there to see it, and the same with the cat, even with the lesion on the surface. So there isn't really any you've got to really examine things, I think, to do it properly. I was frustrated that we were probably missing things by not being thorough.
Interesting. And I suppose, though, the world of being a vet has really progressed through the technology we have. Have you seen a big difference since perhaps you were a student? And I'm by no means saying that you're over the hill or anything like that, but you know what I mean, from maybe 25 years ago or whatever to now. I mean, I can't imagine the advancements just as there's been in medicine, and technology just in general with communication. And here we are talking via Zoom,
It's really interesting, actually, and I was thinking about this recently. I write an article in the Yorkshire Post every week, and I always think of different angles. And so I've actually written one of my columns about exactly that, how technology is advanced in some areas, but completely not advanced in other areas. And I was watching the new remake of All Creatures Great and Small last night, on telly, and there was one little clip where there was two pieces of equipment that Siegfried had picked up to show to the young James Herriot. One was something called a beditzo, which is for castrating cattle, and the other was an emasculator for castrating cows and stallions. And exactly the same pieces of equipment would be used by me. I used emasculators last week, and I used beditzos last week. So some hasn't changed over 90 years, 80 years.
That's amazing.
And it's just the same, just exactly the same. Admittedly, the ones we use are rusty and old, and they look ancient, but they're still quite usable. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got very, modern anesthetics, for example, that are the same essentially as humans have. I was talking to, today, another interesting case, a dog that I'd given a barium meal to x-ray the dog, and barium meal. And that is something that would have been done, 50 years ago as a matter of routine, probably in the right. And yet it's regarded as quite old-fashioned. And then following on from that, the next discussion I had with the owner was that we may need to do an MRI scan on this dog. So, which, when I first started as a vet, and even at vet school, that wasn't a thing. No one really had MRI machines, and now, you know, there's one within half an hour's drive of the practice. So things have definitely advanced, but that doesn't mean to say that the traditional ways have completely disappeared, because some of the stuff is exactly the same as, you know, James Herriot's day, and calving a cow, castrating a horse is probably pretty much the same as it was then. So there's definitely been some advancements for the better, but there's still some old-fashioned ways that we still cling on to.
Yeah, really interesting that. And I have to ask, I mean, really, you know, have you had complete and utter disastrous moments, or moments that you felt that, yes, that I was expecting that to go absolutely smoothly and well, and then something unexpected happened, or something where a situation where perhaps you were thinking doom and gloom and this is the end for that particular you know, animal or whatever, and actually it's pulled through, or, you know, just any, you know, I'm often asked as a musician, oh, any funny stories or any disasters or any whatever, and I can never think of any when I'm asked, but I just wonder if you've got, you know, a little story, a little, you know.
All the time,
something.
yeah. I mean, most days there's something that goes not to plan, if I'm honest, Evelyn. I mean, one of the worst actually I can think of was I was castrating some little piglets at the practice. They're just a week or two old, and there was 6, I think, that came in sort of pet, sort of rare breed pigs. And it's a very simple, straightforward job. They make a huge commotion because they don't like being handled. And I was going through, this was all being filmed. This was series 2 or series 3, I think, of the Yorkshire Vet. And everything was going fine, and I was on piglet number 4. And unbeknownst, as a testicle number 8, unbeknownst to me, this little piglet had what's called an inguinal hernia, where so basically I cut through the scrotum, took the testicle out, and then all the intestines fell out of the hole. So like a pile of snakes on the table, there was a piglet, and all its intestines fell out. And you know, when something goes wrong and you get that really cold feeling inside, and you think, oh no, this is a disaster. And I thought, I must try and stay calm. So I just stayed calm and rushed it into theatre and anaesthetised it, and luckily managed to save the piglet and save the day. But that could have very much have been a complete and utter disaster, and that was fine. And then you get the other side of things as well, where you think something is a total and utter disaster and is never going to come right, and then miraculously, or for whatever reason, everything's right. We've just been treating a pony this week within the practice, and colleagues who have been, you know, doom and gloom, and that far from putting down the little pony. And finally we tried another treatment, and he's rallied and seems to still be going strong. So you get both, really, and I think with experience and practice you get quite a good sense of intuition about what's, you know, what is going to work, and it's quite, you get, so making a diagnosis is a great thing to work out what the problem is, but then making an accurate prognosis as to what's going to happen is even better, because you know, that's telling the owner what's going to happen, and that's really important, because it's no good making a diagnosis if you get the prognosis completely wrong. You need to be able to work out what's likely to happen, and it's notoriously difficult with sheep, of course, because the sheep that you think you've done a brilliant job of and sutured its intestines back together and everything's perfect, then goes and dies before you've left the farm. And the one whose uterus fell out and was covered in straw and mud and everything, that got zero hope, is still going the next lambing time. So it can be difficult to predict, but yeah, there's and it adds to the great emotion of everything, because you don't necessarily know quite what's going to happen.
Absolutely. And I think what you said earlier, where and now I've forgotten the word. You said that you stayed kind of calm you know, there's a calmness about this situation. And certainly when I've watched the Yorkshire Vet, for example, there seems to be a calmness there, even when, you know, all hell could break loose. But and I found that even with the vets who visited the farm, you know, when I was growing up, there was a certain kind of calmness which gave real trust and control towards a situation, you know, from an owner's point of view. And I think that does an awful lot to the landscape of the situation, really. And I
Yeah,
suppose
it's
that's a
interesting.
form of listening.
Yeah, I've always tried to stay calm and level-headed, and even when things are going wrong, you know, like the Rudyard poem, isn't it? If you can keep your head when all around you are losing theirs. But in the early days, a very good friend who was one of the camera ladies, camera women, she said one day, "Julian, do you think you could just maybe run around a bit more and make it a bit more dramatic?"
Dramatic, yeah.
Yeah. Can you just make it a bit more dramatic? Because you know, people like that. If you just ran a bit faster or did something quickly. And I said, well, Laura, not really, because I can't really do that. It's just how I am.
And yet you've run up and down mountains and skied across here, there, and everywhere. And
yeah. But there was this sort of desire to have kind of a bit more kind of kind of thing. I do move quickly when I need to move quickly, but I try to keep calm.
Get a bit of Hollywood in there and razzmatazz and spice up Yorkshire. It's one of my favourite places, Yorkshire, I have to say.
Good, isn't it? Yeah, we like it.
Yeah. It's funny because a few years ago I had to open a section of a local hospital, and I was talking to a consultant. It was for an ear, nose and throat section of the hospital nearby. And the consultant, the audiologist consultant, he was saying how when he was a student, that nothing at all was addressed as far as listening is concerned, listening to his patients, you know, listening to their situation and so on. And he said that as the years have gone by, the first thing he now does is to walk into the waiting room where the patients are obviously waiting, and just literally sit down with the person he's due to see next, and just sit down in that waiting room and say, how are you, and etc., etc. And he said, I can really diagnose, or at least, you know, create some information regarding that person without them really knowing it, so just by having a normal conversation. And he said it's amazing how in his situation he was in the world of hearing, but he hadn't really thought about listening. And I suppose, you know, as a vet, you're clearly, you know, hearing a lot of things, whether it's hearing a heartbeat or feeling a pulse or whatever it might be, but it's the listening aspect, you know, how that animal looks, the owner listening, what are the words, what's the expression, and so on. And that must all kind of come together.
Yes, it does. And I learned this very early on in my veterinary career. And it wasn't really about the blood tests and the X-rays. It was listening to the owner, and you know your animal's better than the vet does, and listening and looking and observing them. You can tell more about what's wrong with the dog by looking at its eyes than you can by taking its temperature. And there's so much just in the facial expression, even. Before you've even reached for a stethoscope, before you've even taken the thermometer out of its packet, and definitely before you've got to the stage of blood tests and X-rays and MRI scans, as I was mentioning before, just reading the dog and listening to the owners, and you're halfway there in terms of your diagnosis by picking up those really essential bits of information. And it happens all the time. I get called in by junior colleagues to say, oh, Julian, can you look at this X-ray of a dog's abdomen? And to get to the X-ray's there, and the dog in the X-ray room is around the corner on the table. And I always go straight to the dog, feel the dog's tummy with my fingers, before looking at the X-ray, because most of the time you can tell with these things are way more sensitive than X-rays.
Amazing.
And you can feel where the tension is, feel where the tightness is, feel the shape of the kidneys, the structure of the kidneys, whether they're knobbly or swollen. You can feel the outline of the liver. You can tell if there's pain anywhere, and you can tell if that abdomen's relaxed. And especially if you do that and look at the dog's face, sometimes if you touch a bit that's sore, the eyes just narrow just a touch, and that's the point where the soreness is. And when I'm palpating a dog's back, for example, I'll prod along the back like this quite firmly, and all the time watching the expression on the face. And sometimes they turn around and try and bite your hand off if it's very and then you have to be careful. But if it's just subtle, you just find that there's a narrowing of the eyes that says, yeah, it's a bit sore there. And we'd go like that, or make some small gesture.
Absolutely.
And it's picking up on those. And if you can pick up on the small things, which saves the need to do lots of expensive tests, because you can. So yeah, you're right. Listening, subtle things, and fingers and ears are important things, aren't they?
Yep, fingers, ears, and eyes.
Eyes,
eyes, really. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And you know, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but
all afternoon I'm looking at it. It's great.
No more operations today?
No, I'm off this afternoon. I timed my appointment with you so that I wouldn't have any interruption.
So you're talking to a drummer then? Actually, Julian, I do have, I've got a little test for you, because I've got some old bones here.
Oh.
Can you see? So I'm holding them close up to you to see. But they're musical bones, but they're animal bones. So which animals would these be? Do you know by looking at them? There's two pairs.
Like tongue depressors.
Oh, say that again?
They look like tongue depressors for pressing your tongue down. But they're not, obviously, or lolly sticks.
Nope. No, they're actual bones.
Ribs, are they bones?
Cow ribs?
Are they cow ribs?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say they look like ribs because they're flat and long.
And they're bent.
And they're a bit curved, yeah. Could they be ribs from, I don't know, some kind of, are they maybe from a fish?
Oh, I don't think so somehow, but who am I to say that to Julian Norton?
I don't know, to be honest.
I'm not sure.
My least successful exam ever was my second year anatomy exam.
Well, here's another one then. Well, they're actually playable. We do actually play these, and normally the modern musical bones are made of wood. So it could be rosewood or beechwood or whatever wood, different kinds of wood.
What do you do? Do you hit them, or do you hit them
on
each
other? No, I can't really play them, I'm afraid, so I can't show you, but you put them between your fingers like that.
Oh, like
and then oh, I can't, hold on a second. Kind of clickety click, but there's amazing bones players out there, but that's what you do. But the wooden ones are can be slightly thinner. Sometimes you can get very thin ones or thicker ones, but and they're slightly easier to negotiate because these are quite heavy and quite thick. But I've got something else in the instrument category.
Yeah, that's a mandible from, I would say that's a mandible from probably a cow.
Could be.
What do the front teeth look like? Oh no, horse.
Horse or donkey?
Or donkey, I can't tell. My anatomy isn't that good.
I have no idea.
Because a donkey would be a bit shorter, perhaps.
Ah, okay.
Wow.
And in Mexico, in South America, they call this a cajita. So it's and you get some amazing players on this. And was
that the teeth rattling?
Yes.
Is that the process?
Oh, yeah, and you can actually feel the teeth rattling, you know, as you're holding the cajita. And then the modern version of that, because obviously you don't want to see people playing you know, real jawbones. This is the modern version.
Excellent. And
Like
what's that
that.
called? Is that the same name?
This is a vibra-slap.
A vibroslap. Wow.
Vibra-slap, yep. And then the other animal-related thing I have to show you is an elephant bell. And it's
there.
got a little clap, not a clapper, a great big, well, it is a clapper, but it's I think this is brass or something. It's really heavy.
And is that, do elephants have it around the neck?
Yeah, they hang it.
Do it like cows in the Alps?
Yes, they hang it round their neck. And but you can get really very large ones. I mean, it's a two-hander thing to lift it up. And then the other thing I have that I thought might interest you is a turkey call.
And would you use that? Would you play an instrument like that ever?
I would use something like this for writing library music. So
right,
music
yeah.
for TV adverts, that type of thing. Or here's another version of the turkey call. Or then finally, I could have got out a lot more things, but anyway, and then this is just a little wooden bird, which is very common in Vietnam. So they have a lot of these types of things. It could be crickets, it could be birds, little insect sounds, just got a couple of birds.
That sounds like cartoon music.
Say that again, it sounds
like cartoon music.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
trying to think of the genre of cartoon that would come from. Quite old-fashioned cartoon, those like Minnie Mouse, Mickey Mouse, really old-fashioned.
Oh, interesting, interesting. I mean, it's
nice
they're all of these sound effects are you know, really fascinating, and you know, you must know, you know, during this whole lockdown period, the emphasis we've had on observing nature a lot more than we've ever observed nature, and you know, the sounds, the movements, and just all the little creepy crawlies in our gardens and so on. And I think these sounds are, you know, in a way sometimes magnified at the moment. And
definitely,
so
yeah. Well, can I give you a sound? I was filming with some pigs on Monday, and since I've been doing my podcast, which is now ground to a bit of a halt with lockdown, I've been recording all sorts of noises from animals when I come across them, and I think I might have some. Oh no, maybe I haven't. Oh no, I've deleted it. I thought I had some pig grunting noises. Making a noise. This is actually a wild boar. It's the wild boar there.
Oh wow! So I can see that on your phone. Wow. Gosh, I think a neighbour in the local village has one.
No. It must be noise. Let me find some animal noises, because I've started recording animal noises everywhere I go.
So we could have a masterpiece by you.
I don't think it'll be a masterpiece. Let me find. Oh no, I'm letting everybody down. There's no music.
Oh, come on, Julian.
Let me see where do they live? When you record music on a phone, where does it live?
That in the music.
Music.
In the.
Where does it go? You can tell I'm not good with technology. Well, there we are. Folder. Voice memos.
Oh yeah, recording bit. Yeah.
I don't know what this is.
It's hard to hear from here, Julian, I will say.
The microphone on my lap, the microphone at the top?
Well, I look.
It's a cow anyway, it's not a very good. I've got to see if this is any better.
There's nothing there.
The problem recording animal noises is you never know when they're going to make the noise. So you think, come on, pig, make a grunting noise. and then no noise comes. So I've got huge tracks of noiseless voice recordings of pigs
Well,
and cats.
you'll have to ask the sound engineer of the Yorkshire Vet to give you his whole sound library of the series, and then you can create a
That's what I need
masterpiece.
to do. Get some wild track.
I think it's fun to do, though.
Some pigs. You see those baby pigs?
Oh, look. Oh, Bonnie, their little snouts.
That was before I castrated them.
Goodness.
It was last Monday.
They're gorgeous, gorgeous.
Really
I have a little pig.
Very nice. Does that make a noise?
Well, it makes a noise of a frog. So there we go. Anyway, on that fun note, Julian, I just want to say a massive, I have to say, I wrote out a whole shed load of questions and things like that, and I haven't looked at anything. So I'll probably, end this podcast and then look through the questions and think, oh, why didn't I ask this or that? But
well,
anyway.
if people like listening to us, then I'd be love to come on again. So if you've got space, then I'm sure we can do round 2.
Be very welcome. Well, we can have a duet with the pigs and the cows and all of that. That would be fun.
That would be better, yeah. If I organise myself, I'll get some proper animal music lined up and we can do a duet. Yeah,
yes. Okay, there we go. There, we've got it. We've got it sussed. We've got life sorted out. Anyway, but really, thank you so much, because I know how busy you are, and
I love doing these kind of things, and like I say, so much has happened over the last 5 years for me. And once I was just a vet, and now I get to do this kind of thing. So that's brilliant.
Well, I think it's amazing the impact that you and all of your colleagues have had on people like myself and the general public who don't know anything about the whole medical or science aspect of being a vet, and but it's just brought such an interest into our lives, and for that we're really appreciative, and I think it's just going to go on and on and on forever, really. I really do. To be that curiosity.
Yeah, I've stopped trying to predict the future, because it's impossible, and so many things are just out of my hands. I just go with the flow now, and it's quite nice to do that, actually.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Julian, very much, and we wish you all the very best during this kind of more challenging times that we're experiencing.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Evelyn. It's been an absolute pleasure.
There we go.